Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of this reading vlog of The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Bakker. Today we are talking about Chapter 5, Momen? I don't know. I will let you decide. But we are in a new part. We are on part 2 as well. It is titled The Emperor, and in my last video, I was a little worried. I was a little worried because the word emperor to me meant throne rooms, it meant politics, and that's exactly what we get. Mostly. But we're starting out with, oh wait, let me read this first part. Early summer, 4110, Year of the Tusk, Moment, because we get all of those. And one thing I failed to mention as well is that a lot of these little excerpts here, they're actually written by, some of them anyway, are written by Drusus Acamian, Compendium of the First Holy War. So not only is he a sorcerer in this tale, but he is a archivist, a writer of histories. But anyway, let's move on. So we meet this man, the emperor, Ikuri Zarius III, and he is asking about his nephew. And so first and foremost, we get a very different visual style here. Designed to capture the setting sun, the Imperial Audience Hall possessed no walls behind the Emperor's raised dais. Sunlight streamed into the vaulted interior, shining across the memorial pillars of the concourse and gilding, not gliding, the tapestries suspended between them. A breeze tousled the smoke from censers arrayed about the dais, mingling the scent of fragrant oils with that of sky and sea. So we get a very beautiful picture of this sun-drenched throne room, I guess it is, this audience hall. And we find out also that Zarius III is known as God of Men, a god of men. But for as long as Zarius could remember, he'd always been surrounded by soldiers, ambassadors, slaves, spies, and astrologers. So right off the bat, I enjoy this part because we are empathizing with this man. Because at first, I think when we see royalty, when we see emperors of any kind, kings, whatever it may be, we immediately think they're just kind of these boring leaders, these people who only have their spot in their world because of who they were born from. But here we learn that matching the emperor's gaze was forbidden to those without imperial blood. The thought horrified him. So that's what I found interesting, is that we have this man sitting on this throne. He's surrounded by all of his servants, and nobody can match his gaze. And so he's kind of, with the exception of the people who do have the right, I guess, to match his gaze, he's alone. He's utterly alone. And I just imagine that, you know, being in this room surrounded by people, you can never really connect with people. Even I get it. He's in this high status. He's an emperor, but you know, I still think he probably craves that human connection, and he's never going to get it because we all know that you can see into the soul of somebody else, right? Through their eyes. Their eyes, a person's eyes really connects you to them. And so him being severed from this very human and very common act, it really reflects a lot about his interior torment. But months had passed since Methanet had declared the Holy War, so we were getting a timestamp there. We also learn of Nurse Calmenius, however, was a far different matter. Of all the great Enrithi nobles, blah, 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 blah. So this guy shows up. There's a lot of politicking. He asks him, how goes the war? Zarius nearly bolted from his seat. Someone gasped, because Conrian nobles often refer to their betters as uncle. It is the custom, but it's okay. It's okay because his buddy Skeos, I don't know how to pronounce that. It looks like a very Greek name. Quickly murmured at his ear because, you know, he says he means no offense because everybody else is quite offended. But tell me, did you have an occasion to confer with Proyas? So we get a mention of Proyas, who we know. And anyway, they're talking about holy wars, and they're talking about politics stuff, and I was getting absolutely bored until. Thank God, Bakker, you saved me from this absolutely boring exchange because, you know, my whole thing with reading, what I enjoy from reading is, you know, learning about these characters. And while Bakker does that pretty well, he often thrusts you into a situation that kind of makes your eyes glaze over a little bit because he throws a lot of names at you and terms and times and places, and you're just like, I don't know what the hell's going on. But he had this beautiful scene turn when birds shat upon his face, and stunned he slapped at his face, then studied the muck on his fingers. Kill those birds! So he's yelling up to kill these birds who have pooped on him. And this scene was hilarious because of that. He has all these guys shooting arrows up into to the high vaulted ceilings of this chamber, trying to kill these birds that pooped on this emperor. And that was a great break of the scene, because I was honestly, it's really hard to read stuff like this and not try to figure it out, even though it's impossible to figure out, because again, so many names, so many places, so many events, so many new people you're running into. And so it's kind of difficult to just orient yourself in the scene. And I think Bakker knows this. That's why he had the birds poop on the emperor. And is it subtext? Is it foreshadowing? Is it a bit of both? I would wager it is. But then he meets his mother, and she's not too happy with him. Her nephew, or her grandson, his nephew, was sent to off to war, right? Off to this holy war to meet them in battle. And they seem to really not care for each other whatsoever, the emperor and his mother. But I noticed this strange thing. So her smile riddled the cosmetics about her lips with small cracks. A longing to kiss those lips struck Xerius with bodily force. That is really the only mention of any kind of weird incestuous thoughts within this man, but it really stood out to me. So I'm curious to see where that goes, if we're going to have a Game of Thrones situation on our hands. But first, fate delivers you this Maithanet against my counsel, and you try to assassinate him. So that is when we also find out that Xerius tries to go assassinate the Shriya, right? Or something like that. And also her beloved grandson, poor sweet Confus, who at this very moment marched somewhere in the Junati steppes, searching for the dread Salvendi, I guess. So that's when we learn about the nephew, his nephew, her grandson. And that's kind of it. So they're kind of going back and forth, just railing on each other, hitting each other, screaming. There's a lot of, and I think this is the danger when you thrust somebody into a plot too quickly without it feeling like, sort of in media res, right? Where I think a lot of times where we want to be in media res, we want to be like, hey, what's going on? Not know the full story. But I think in this case, it leads to melodrama a little bit. Because there's a lot of exclamation points in this section, a lot of yelling, a lot of passion, one might say. And without sort of a knowledge of that passion, it's difficult to really buy into the drama. But that brings us to the next scene, which was kind of cool. And like tattered cloth in the wind, the braziers fluttered in the small courtyard Gankelti had selected for the meeting. So they're meeting there. This Sisharim shows up, this crazy guy who has a snake around his neck with glowing eyes, and they're chatting about it. And then we see superimposed like a transparent mask over Malinet's, that's his name, a skull-like visage was the face of another, a grizzled Kianing warrior who still bore the desert's mark on his hawkish features. Scaras, Xerius said. So he recognizes this face, but then this man also tells him that Confess is doomed. No one possesses cunning or might enough to overcome the Sylvendi, not even your nephew. Your army and your heir are dead, Emperor Carrion. So he is threatening the fact that, the Emperor thinks his nephew's going to go out there with his army and wipe stuff up, but this man is telling him otherwise, and they're meeting in this very secluded area surrounded by interesting trees. Well, choke on this. Maithanet has sealed a pact with the Scarlet Spires, which we actually learned in the last section from Rau, I believe, right? That was the revelation there. And even now, the Scarlet Magi prepare to join the Holy War. So I know last time I said, and that's pretty much the end of the chapter, and I know last time I said that I felt that Bakker was creating a very unique culture, right? One that is mixed of many rather than feeling like it's stripped from one of our own. This chapter felt extremely Middle Eastern, like through and through. And I know he is, some of you out there have told me that, one of the two books that he had at his side while he was writing these books were the Bible and also, of course, Blood Meridian. But the Bible is really what is ringing true to me while I read this. There's holy wars. There's even mentions of myrrh. There's harlots. There's crucifixions. There's nails and golden nails. There's all kinds of things. I mean, like I said, even the tavern was called the Holy Leper. So through and through and through, highly biblical. Man, why do I have such a hard time saying the word? Highly biblical influences here. It's okay. It's okay. I was just hoping that maybe it would be a more interesting mix, like a diversification of these cultures rather than feeling like I'm literally watching a culture from, the Bible kind of unfold. I don't want you to think it's not an exact blueprint, but it's heavily inspired from the Bible, which, it's okay. It's fine. I was just thinking that earlier on, I was getting more of a sense that Bakker was really blending cultures in an interesting way. But everything from the names of these people, to the language, there's some language that is brought up, very, very Hebrew undertones anyway. So that is that. Overall, it was kind of an enjoyable experience, chapter 5. I will say that I'm so glad that Bakker punctuated that absolutely boring political discussion with bird poop on the man's face, and then we got to see them shooting the arrows up and clatter. The arrows would clatter down to the floor. So that was fun. And then I guess the exchange with his mother, kind of interesting. I feel like that's a trope that I've seen 1,000 times. I actually just read Joe Abercrombie's A Little Hatred, and there's a very similar dynamic between, I guess it's not 100% similar. They don't hate each other, but there's this motherly, I don't know, the strange relationship between mother and son. And I'm not saying it has to be completely different or anything like that. It's just something I noticed. But anyway, next time we're going to talk about chapter 6, the Junati step. So we'll see how that goes. Let me know. I saw somebody out there who's reading along with me finally, a newbie just like me. But throw your comments at me. Throw your observations. Throw your differing opinions or your opinions that agree with mine. And thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me. And I will see you in the next one.